Hey, how you doing? This is RJ. Today I'm going to do something a little different, something a little fun, because usually with my videos I have a lot of quotes and things that I go through, but today I'm going to go over something which may turn out just to be a hoax, but there's also the possibility that it could be true. And this thing, if it is true about the Avengers Endgame and Captain Marvel movies, well, if it is true, it would drastically affect both the MCU and Marvel Comics moving forward. And not just that, I think it would even have a drastic impact on the DCEU. So, where I get this from, it is on Reddit. There is a Marvel Spoilers Reddit, and you have this guy, and he's claiming to be someone who worked on Avengers Endgame, and his company was fired, and so he's letting out all of these spoilers for what's going to happen in Avengers Endgame. Now, in an instance like this, you can't automatically say, well, he's either 100% right or he's 100% wrong. That's a false dichotomy, because there could be a lot of different things going on in between. I mean, it could be someone who does have some knowledge of what is going on, but wants to act like a big man and is making up a bunch of other stuff to go with it. Or it could be that he's so upset with Disney, he wants to spoil the movie, but he knows that Disney will go after him like a dog if he actually gets caught, and therefore he's putting this stuff out under the cover of I was someone else, and therefore trying to do that and just get away with it. You know, there's a whole bunch of possibilities there. So when you look at what he says, you can't automatically say, well, one thing is wrong, therefore everything is wrong. It could be some things are right. But I only want to focus on two of the minor things, I would say, that he actually says. So, he said he worked for a production company that worked on Avengers Endgame, and that Disney really didn't know how Captain Marvel as a character was going to be received. They want to put out this progressive character, but they're really not sure how the character is going to be received. And since Disney likes to cover all of its bases, what they did when they shot Avengers Endgame was that in a lot of cases, they did scenes that had cast members that were switched up in the same scene. That is to say, they made a Captain Marvel heavy scene, and then they made a Captain Marvel light scene, where she doesn't play that much of a role. And he claims the reason they did that was because they're waiting to see how Captain Marvel is received, and if the character is received well, they're going to put out the version of Avengers Endgame that's Captain Marvel heavy, and if she is not well received at all, then they're going to put out the version of Avengers Endgame that's Captain Marvel light. And so, again, he's claiming that Disney is trying to cover its bases, and there's basically two different versions of Avengers Endgame. Not that there's a different ending, it's just one that has Captain Marvel heavy, another that has Captain Marvel light. And the thing is that if this is true, if what he says is true, he also says something else which has the possibility of confirming what he says as being true. If he is actually telling the truth, and if Captain Marvel doesn't do very well, isn't received well as a character, and they go with an Avengers Endgame that's Captain Marvel light, well, he also claims that Brie Larson did not take kindly to actually having two different versions of these scenes made where she was not actually in or the main focus of these scenes. And if that is the case, and they put out a Captain Marvel light Avengers Endgame, you're probably going to hear Brie Larson start to complain in some way, shape, or form. Because if there is one thing that Brie Larson is not, it is subtle. Nor, as we all know, is she closed-mouthed. So, if this actually happens, there is the possibility of Brie Larson not taking kindly to this happening, and will probably express that to someone in the media. So, I think we can all see what impact this would have on the MCU. Because, again, if it was true, and they had to go with a Captain Marvel light Avengers Endgame, that would set the tone for what the next phase of the MCU is going to look like. Marvel will probably try to still push their progressive agenda, but they'll have to do it in a much more light-handed way. And, contrary to that, of course, if Captain Marvel is received well, and they go with the Captain Marvel heavy Avengers Endgame, then they're just going to go full bore with their woke MCU from here on out. But besides that, it would have a massive impact on Marvel Comics as well. Because I've covered in a number of my videos the fact that the people over at Marvel Comics are just chomping at the bit, just waiting for Captain Marvel to come out and do well. And when it does, then they're going to point to it and say, see, look, I told you all this progressive stuff we're putting in the comics people want. I told you that this is the future. We were right all along. And they're going to use that as their ticket to start printing more and more SJW heavy Marvel comics. And the main evidence that I would have for this are from the words of Sana Amanat, again, who is the second in command at Marvel Comics. She has said on different occasions that characters in the comics, when they don't do well in the comics, like America Chavez. She was talking specifically about America Chavez, saying that the character didn't do well in her own comic and it had to be canceled, but she still considered that a success because they were going to take that character and shove her into different venues. They were going to put her into the cartoons, they're going to go put her into YA novels and everything else. And so she still sees that comic as a success because it introduced that character, and therefore they're going to push it into different kinds of mediums from now on. And beside that, when she was talking about Kate Bishop's Hawkeye, she was saying that, look, the comic didn't do well, but then they put out a trade, and the trade was just snatched up by library associations and parent associations, who, by the way, don't actually buy the trade based upon the content of it. They buy it sight unseen on the concept of it. That's how they sell them to library associations and to parent associations. They sell the concept to them. But she was saying that, look, the trade did so well with these associations that we just had to bring this character back in another series in the comics, even though the first series did so poorly. So over at Marvel Comics, they do this all the time. They look at different avenues where these characters are selling, and they use that as an excuse to say, look, we're going to put this character back into another comic, even though it failed the first time, and we're going to do the exact same thing again. And it's a bit of sleight of hand on their part, to say the least, in order to do this, but I think we can all clearly see that the movies are the big boy on the block, and if Captain Marvel does well in the movies, they're certainly going to take that and say, we're going to start pumping this stuff out with the comics because the character is doing well there. Therefore, that is our ticket to actually keep on doing what we've been doing so far. So the thing is that, again, if this is correct, and they have to go with a Captain Marvel light Avengers Endgame, then we would, at the very least, see, I would say, a curbing of what they're doing over at Marvel Comics. They would certainly not start printing this stuff out left, right, and center, as they really plan to do with the rest of 2019, because they have said over at Marvel Comics a number of times that 2019 is the year of Captain Marvel, and they mean that. But if they're proven wrong and the character doesn't do well, then all of those plans are for naught, and they're going to actually have to look twice at putting out so much stuff with Captain Marvel on it. And, as I said, this might actually have a far-reaching impact even into the DCEU. Because if you look at the guy who is slated to take over the role of Batman in the DCEU, I can't think of his name off the top of my head. Anyways, this guy, he actually, when he opens his mouth, makes Brie Larson look like a sane person. Quite honestly, this guy just keeps on talking about white privilege over and over and over again, as if it's the only thing he can speak of. He is just obsessed with this kind of woke, progressive talk. So let's say that this happens, and Captain Marvel doesn't do well, so they have to go with an Avengers Endgame that's Captain Marvel light. And that would domino effect all the way down to all the other movies in the MCU. If that were to happen, and the DCEU, who is under a rock to begin with, who's far and away behind the MCU in success, if they saw this happening, if they get wind of this happening, they would say to themselves, hey look, this is our chance. We could actually start to gain some ground on Marvel by putting out a product that people actually want. Not to concentrate on this woke product that they are putting out, to actually put out something based upon merit. And if they did that, they would have to take a really good look at some of the people that are playing these roles, like this new actor who's supposed to be playing Batman in the future, and say to themselves, Well, Brie Larson shot off her mouth again and again, and look what happened with the Captain Marvel movie. Maybe we don't want him playing this role. So, as I said, this could be complete BS. But if it was true, I would say it would have a significant impact on actually turning our fandoms of comics and comic book movies back towards something that has actual merit. And I just wanted to put this out there before the Captain Marvel movie came out, because it gives you just another reason, a possibility of why you might not want to go see Captain Marvel. Like you need another reason, right? So, if I've given you anything new to think about, hit like, hit the shield in the lower right hand corner of your screen to subscribe, and leave me a comment. Tell me what you think about this theory. Alright, I'll see you later. Bye.